I can still picture the moment I opened that letter like it happened yesterday. For a split second, the words in front of me seemed to blur, almost dancing in a haze. My brain couldn't fully grasp the harsh reality staring me down. I blinked and read the lines again, hoping they might somehow change, that there might be some mistake. But no, the truth was clear, staring at me as plainly as the ink on the page. In that moment, the world as I knew it, the life I had trusted, shattered. But let's rewind a bit. It had started out as a typical day, one where you expect nothing out of the ordinary. The sun filtered through the blinds, casting a soft glow across the kitchen, while the smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. The house was quiet, with only the faint hum of the dishwasher and the occasional scrape of a chair breaking the silence. Mia, my wife, was sitting at the kitchen table, her legs tucked beneath her, lost in her phone. Her soft blonde hair framed her face, and the glow from the screen lit up her expression. She seemed so absorbed, so distant, as if whatever she was reading on that screen mattered more than anything. Especially me. "Morning," I called out as I poured myself a cup of coffee. The words came out automatically, like a routine I was too familiar with after all these years. Each morning felt like a repeat of the one before. "Morning," she replied, barely looking up from her phone. Her eyes were glued to whatever was on the screen, probably social media or work emails. It didn't matter anymore. It hadn't for a while. These days, I found myself leaning against the counter, sipping my coffee slowly, watching her over the rim of my mug. She looked great, as usual. Her casual sweater hung loosely on one shoulder, and her yoga pants fit just right. She always looked good enough to pull close, but I didn't. I just kept watching, feeling more like a spectator in our own life. But something felt different. Mia seemed more distracted, more absorbed by her phone than by anything around her, including me. We still talked, still went out on weekends, but the spark, whatever it was that used to keep us connected, was fading. I told myself it was just the stress of work, or maybe the fact that we had both gotten too comfortable. Isn't that what happens in marriages? "What's on the agenda today?" I asked, trying to get a conversation started as I set my coffee mug down. "Not much," she murmured, still not bothering to look up. "Maybe run some errands, hit the gym, and then I'll grab something for dinner." "Cool," I replied, but even to my own ears, my voice felt distant. It was like we were speaking from different worlds. I glanced at the clock, 7:45. Time to go. My briefcase was by the door, and my keys jingled in my hand as I picked them up. Mia didn't even look up. She stayed glued to her phone, the rhythmic clicking and scrolling echoing in the quiet room. No goodbye, no warm send-off. I tried not to let it get to me. It wasn't always like this, but today it felt more pronounced. "See you tonight," I said, heading toward the door. "Yeah, see you," she responded without a second glance. The drive to work was the usual blur. Traffic, radio chatter, and the sight of cars and families rushing off to their routines. I parked at the office, a sterile, glass building, and settled into another long day of finance meetings, reports, and emails. Time passed, but my mind kept drifting back to Mia. The uneasy feeling that had settled in my stomach earlier still hadn't gone away. Maybe I was being paranoid, but there was a voice in the back of my head telling me that the quiet life we had built wasn't as perfect as it seemed. Lunchtime rolled around, and my phone buzzed with a new message. It wasn't the kind I was expecting. The subject line alone stopped me in my tracks. "You deserve to know the truth." The message came from a name I didn't recognize, Hannah. Someone Mia had mentioned a few times, maybe a coworker, or a friend from her office. But this wasn't just a casual email. It felt heavy, as if it carried some kind of ominous weight that I wasn't ready to face. My finger hovered over the screen for a moment before I opened it. That was the moment everything changed. The email burned into my mind, and the rest of the day faded into a blur of confusion and disbelief. Before I saw that email, everything felt normal. It was just another Tuesday, one where nothing was supposed to shift the balance of our lives. The office hummed with the usual noise of phones ringing and keyboards clattering. I got to work, just like I always did. My finance job wasn't anything glamorous, but it paid the bills, provided the stability I thought we needed. That's the deal, right? You put in the hours, working away for years, so you can afford the house, the vacations, and the weekends spent pretending everything's fine. But looking back, I realized we were both just going through the motions. That morning had felt like every other morning. Now, though, I see the cracks in our foundation, the cracks I had refused to acknowledge. By lunchtime, I was already drained. The turkey sandwich I'd packed the night before sat on my desk, half-eaten. My appetite was gone, replaced by a gnawing sensation in my stomach. I checked my phone again, scrolling through emails in a daze. Then, the message from Hannah popped up. For a moment, I thought it might be work-related, maybe an update on a project involving Mia. But the subject line hit me like a punch to the gut. You deserve to know the truth. I froze. My heart pounded as I tried to comprehend what that truth was. What was I about to find out? With a mix of dread and curiosity, I opened the email. It was brief and blunt, carrying an urgency that hit me like a punch to the gut. You don't know me very well, but I think you should be aware of something about Mia. I work with her, and I've seen things that I can't keep to myself anymore. She's been seeing someone else for a while now. I'm really sorry, but I thought you needed to know. That was it. No details, no elaboration. Just those few words, sharp and chilling. The weight of them hit me hard, sinking in with a sickening twist in my stomach. Mia, my wife, the woman I had built my life with over 7 years, was cheating on me. Suddenly, everything started to make sense. The distance between us, the late nights, the way she was always glued to her phone. It all came together in a way that felt suffocating. I sat there, staring at my screen, the sandwich I had been eating long forgotten. The buzz of the office around me faded into the background as the enormity of the truth I had just learned began to sink in. I wanted to call her immediately, to confront her, demand answers. But what could I possibly say? Did you cheat on me? The word sounded so absurd, like something out of a bad movie. But there it was, right in front of me, in black and white. And still, I couldn't fully believe it. For the rest of the afternoon, I moved through my work like a ghost, my mind spinning with questions. Who was she seeing? How long had this been going on? Was Hannah telling the truth? Or was this some twisted lie aimed at ruining everything? Deep down, though, I knew something had been off for a while, and I'd chosen to ignore it. By the time I left the office, the sky had darkened. I drove home, my grip on the steering wheel tightening with each mile. My knuckles turned white as a mix of anger and confusion churned inside me. I replayed everything in my head, every argument, every late night, every glance she'd given her phone instead of me, and tried to make sense of it. Why would Mia do this? Why would she betray me? When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked the same. The lights were on, the curtains drawn. It seemed just as it always had, like the picture-perfect suburban life I thought we were living. But something felt off. Something was broken, even if I couldn't put my finger on it yet. I sat in the car for a few moments, staring at the front door, wondering what awaited me on the other side. Would she greet me the way she always had? Would I see warmth in her eyes like I used to? Or would I see something else? Guilt? Regret? Something I hadn't been able to see before? Finally, I stepped out of the car, the weight of the email still heavy in my chest. The door creaked as I opened it, and there she was, sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone as if nothing had changed. She looked up at me and smiled, a smile that now felt hollow. "Hey," she said, so casually, as if the world hadn't just come crashing down. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to act like everything was normal, pretending I didn't know what I now knew. "Hey," I replied, my voice strained. I stood there for a moment, watching her, wondering how I had been so blind. How had I missed all the signs? How had I convinced myself that the growing distance between us was just a natural part of marriage? That the late nights and secretive behavior were just things we get past? But now I couldn't pretend anymore. I needed answers, and I was determined to get them. That night, the house felt unnervingly quiet. The faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant buzz of the TV couldn't fill the silence hanging between us. I could feel it, that pressure in the air. She sat on the couch, unaware of the storm inside me, oblivious to the fact that everything we had was on the verge of falling apart. I wasn't ready to confront her yet, not with just a cryptic email from a stranger to go on. I needed more. I needed to see it for myself. I had to catch her in the act, hear the lies fall from her lips before I decided how to move forward. My fists clenched at my sides, my nails digging into my palms as I watched her mindlessly scroll through her phone. How many times had she sat there, texting him, pretending everything was fine? "So, what's for dinner?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay steady. Mia looked up, startled by my sudden interruption. "Oh, I thought I'd just order something. Didn't have time to go to the store today," she replied, her eyes already flickering back to her phone. She didn't even bother to meet my gaze. "Sure, sounds good," I said, nodding absent-mindedly, but my mind wasn't on dinner. I was already planning my next move. Over the years, we had developed a routine. Our phones were always left carelessly unlocked on the counter or by the bedside. There had never been any reason to think twice before. But now, that uncertainty gnawed at me. After we ate, some forgettable takeout sushi neither of us really liked, Mia excused herself to take a shower. The moment I heard the bathroom door click shut, I knew it was time. Her phone lay face down on the couch, exactly where it always did. I hesitated for a moment, my thoughts racing with 1,000 frantic possibilities. What if I found something I wasn't ready to see? What if I found nothing at all? But there was no going back now. I grabbed her phone, my heart pounding in my chest as I unlocked it using the passcode I knew so well. The screen lit up, revealing the usual array of apps, text messages, social media notifications, and emails. Everything looked normal, just as it always had. But I had learned not to trust appearances. I started with her messages, scrolling through conversations, desperate to find something, anything, that stood out. Most of it was the usual small talk with friends, family, and coworkers. But then I saw it. A thread with a contact simply labeled M. My heart raced as I clicked into the conversation. The words I read hit me like a gut punch. There it was, the proof I had been dreading. "M, you looked amazing today. Can't stop thinking about last night." "Mia, stop it. I'm going to get caught if you keep texting me like this." "M, what time is it? Getting home tomorrow. We could meet again." The color drained from my face as I read those lines, each one a sharp twist of the knife, each one confirming the unthinkable. Mia was cheating on me. My wife, the woman I had given everything to over the last 7 years, had been having an affair. Suddenly, all the signs I had ignored, the late nights, the distracted looks, the constant attachment to her phone, came rushing back. I had been blind, completely unaware, while she was lying to me with every smile, every kiss. What cut the deepest was how little effort she made to hide it. The messages between them dripped with intimacy, inside jokes, playful banter, plans for secret meetups. It was like reading a script of a relationship I wasn't even part of. But what hurt the most wasn't just the betrayal. It was the way she communicated with him, as though he was the one she turned to, the one she cared about, the one she longed to see, the one she used to talk to me like that. Sickness churned in my stomach, but I couldn't stop scrolling. I needed to know how deep this went. How long had this been going on? I had to see the whole picture. The text stretched back weeks, then months. I traced their relationship from its beginning. What had started as casual meetings at her office quickly escalated. Coffee turned into dinner, and dinners turned into late-night rendezvous. And there I was, sitting in a daze, just as the sound of the shower upstairs stopped. She would be out soon. My hands trembled as I closed the messaging app and carefully placed her phone back where I had found it. I stared at the dark screen of the TV, trying to process everything I had just discovered. In an instant, everything had changed. The life I thought we had, built on trust, shared memories, comfort, had been built on lies. I couldn't confront her now, not yet. I needed more proof. I had to see it with my own eyes. I had to catch her in the act, watch how she would try to explain away everything when she realized I knew the truth. I'd been blindsided once, but not again. Mia finally appeared downstairs, her hair wrapped in a towel, looking refreshed, like she had washed away not just the grime of the day, but her guilt too. She smiled at me, that same smile that now felt completely false. "What should we watch tonight?" she asked, casually flipping through Netflix like we were just any ordinary couple, settling in for a normal evening. I watched her closely, my stomach churning with the weight of everything I had just learned. "Whatever you want," I muttered, struggling to keep my voice steady. She settled on a mindless show, but I couldn't focus on it. All I could think about was the truth, hanging thick between us like a fog I could barely breathe through. She didn't know yet, but her time was running out. I would get to the bottom of this, and when I confronted her, she wouldn't be able to deny a single word. The next few days passed in a blur, each one heavier than the last. I kept replaying the messages with that faceless stranger, every word, every promise, dissecting them in my mind. But reading wasn't enough. I needed to see it with my own eyes. I needed to watch them together, feel the full force of her betrayal before I decided what to do next. So I waited, playing the part of the unsuspecting husband, going through the motions of daily life while she continued her affair, completely unaware that I was onto her. But beneath the surface, my anger simmered, waiting for the right moment to explode. And then, it came. She casually told me she had a late meeting at work. The same tired excuse. "Don't wait up," she said, giving me that same practiced smile she had perfected to cover her lies. "Fine by me," I replied, pretending I didn't care. "I'll just order takeout and relax." She kissed me goodbye, a quick, empty peck, and left. I watched her go, knowing full well she wasn't headed to any meeting. After giving her 20 minutes, just enough time for her to think I wasn't suspicious, I grabbed my keys and followed her. Her car was easy to spot. She always parked in the same spot near her office. But this time, she didn't go into the building. Instead, she crossed the street to a small cafe, one of those cozy places we used to go when everything felt real between us, back before all the lies. I slipped into the shadows, my heart racing as I watched her. And then, I saw him. I spotted him sitting alone at a corner table, his back to the window. At first, I couldn't make out his face clearly, but the moment I saw him, I knew exactly who he was. The man everyone knew as the infamous Sim. When Mia walked in, I saw a smile spread across her face, one I hadn't seen in months. She slid into the seat opposite him, leaning in as they started talking. My stomach twisted as I watched her reach across and touch his hand. Every laugh, every smile she shared with him was like a stab in my chest. This man, this stranger, had become the center of her world. Then, without any hesitation, Mia leaned over the table and kissed him. It wasn't just a friendly peck or a quick goodbye. It was a kiss, one that lingered, a kiss she hadn't shared with me in what felt like forever. My chest burned as I saw her lips against his, her fingers running through his hair as if she couldn't get enough. They didn't even try to hide it. It was like I wasn't even there, invisible to them both. The anger inside me started to boil, hotter than I had ever felt before. It was like a wave of fury, washing over me in a way that left me gasping for air. The thought of barging into that cafe, yanking him out by his collar, and making him pay for touching her crossed my mind. I wanted to confront Mia right there, demand some answers, yell at her, and make her feel every bit of the pain she caused me. But instead, I turned and walked away. I refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing me fall apart. Not yet. I drove aimlessly for hours, my mind a whirlwind of anger and confusion. How could she do this to me? To us? After everything we had gone through, all the promises we had made, how could she throw it all away for someone like him? My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. I could feel my jaw clenching, holding back a scream. But as the initial shock faded, something darker settled in its place. The anger didn't go away. It only sharpened, becoming more focused. I wasn't going to confront her in a fit of rage. No, I was going to make her regret this betrayal. I would make her feel the weight of what she had done, but in a way she'd never expect. If she wanted to tear apart our marriage, then I'd show her how it felt. That's when the idea hit me. Almost too perfectly, too poetically. Mia's mother, Carla, was always the kind of woman who turned heads. She was older, yes, but she had a timeless beauty that made people look twice. Her dark hair was always perfectly styled, and her figure was fit and toned from years of yoga and Pilates. She was always friendly, maybe even a little flirtatious, but I'd always written it off as just part of her outgoing nature. Looking back now, though, I realized there was always something there between us, an unspoken tension I never dared to acknowledge until now. If Mia wanted to betray me, then I'd show her what real betrayal looked like. I didn't think twice as I drove straight to Carla's house. My heart raced with a strange mix of anticipation and determination. I knew what I had to do. I had to make Mia feel the same way I did. And what better way to do that than to take away the one person she could never replace? Her mother. When I pulled up to Carla's house, it was late, but the lights were still on. I knocked on the door, my mind working through the plan that was rapidly taking shape. Carla opened the door, her face shifting from surprise to concern as she took in my disheveled appearance. "James," she said softly, her voice full of worry. "What's wrong?" "It's late." I gave her a look that said everything. "I just need to talk about Mia," I said, my voice strained but steady. Carla stepped aside, inviting me in. She led me to the living room and sat beside me on the couch, her hand resting gently on my arm as she listened carefully. I poured my heart out, explaining the growing distance between Mia and me, the lies that had tangled us up. Carla listened intently, her eyes wide with sympathy and concern. "I'm so sorry, James," she whispered, her hand moving to mine in a comforting squeeze. I looked into her eyes, and in that moment, something shifted. Her gaze wasn't just sympathetic. There was something else there, a softness I hadn't seen before, something beneath the surface that had always been there, but I'd never allowed myself to recognize. Without thinking, I leaned in closer, my instincts taking over. Our eyes met, and for a moment, she paused, her expression unreadable. But then, she gave a small nod, her hands resting gently on my shoulders. The tension between us was palpable, a quiet understanding of the situation. I leaned back slightly, and she adjusted herself, sitting comfortably as we exchanged a few quiet words. There was no guilt, no hesitation, only the need to reclaim something that had been taken from me, to take back what was mine. Her presence was calming, and I could feel the weight of the years of unspoken tension fading as we shared a quiet moment together. We stayed close, the silence between us growing more comfortable with every passing second. The air was thick with the scent of revenge. I knew this would hurt Mia more than anything I could ever say. This would be the ultimate betrayal, the one thing she would never expect. The thought of how she would feel when she found out sent a bitter rush through me. Her soft sigh was the only sound in the room as we sat there, the quiet relief of our shared understanding settling in. And as I held her, I couldn't shake the thought of Mia. I imagined the look on her face when the truth finally came out, just as mine had shattered. A strange mix of satisfaction and seething anger charged through me. The memory of the warmth that had once been mine now fueled an ice-cold resolve to dismantle Mia's life, piece by piece. But I knew I had to take my time. There was no need to rush. She had no idea that I had seen through her lies, or that I'd already crossed a line she couldn't come back from. Soon, though, she would fully grasp the magnitude of what I was about to do. One evening, Mia came home after yet another of her late meetings. The lies were so obvious now, spilling from her lips with such ease it made my skin crawl. I played the role of the dutiful husband, observing her every move while knowing that her world was about to come crashing down. As she walked into the living room, I noticed the flicker of panic in her eyes, the hesitation in her step. She knew something wasn't right. She could feel it, deep down. "Hey," she said, trying to sound casual, but I could hear the slight tremor in her voice. "How was your day?" I didn't respond with pleasantries. I wasn't interested in small talk anymore. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady, firm. Mia stopped in her tracks, her hands gripping the strap of her bag like it was the only thing holding her together. For the first time in weeks, she truly looked at me, really looked at me. Maybe she saw something dark in my expression, because I saw the blood drain from her face. "What about?" she asked, her voice faltering. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed, my gaze unflinching. "I know, Mia," I said, my tone cold, emotionless. "I know about you and him. I've known for a while now." Her face went completely pale, and she stammered, struggling to find a way out of the mess she had created. What? What are you talking about?" "I don't." I interrupted her, my voice sharp. "I've seen the texts. I've seen you with him. Hell, I watched you kiss him, Mia. So don't try to deny it." Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. She was trapped, completely cornered. I could see the panic rising in her. "How could you do this?" I pressed, my voice low and simmering with anger. "After everything we've been through, after everything I've done for you, you throw it all away for him. Was it worth it? Was sneaking around behind my back worth everything you're about to lose?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but I couldn't feel a thing. Her guilt meant nothing to me anymore. She had made her choices, and now she would face the consequences. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice shaky as the first tears fell. "I can fix this, James. Please. We can work through this." I let out a bitter laugh, one that filled the room with an almost eerie sound. "Fix it? There's nothing to fix, Mia. You broke this. Not me." I stood up, towering over her, my presence overwhelming. "And here's the best part," I said, watching her face twist in confusion. Her tear-filled eyes stared up at me. "What? What do you mean?" "I slept with your mother," I said, letting the words hit her like a punch to the gut. They hung between us, heavy and final. Mia staggered back, her hand flying to her mouth in disbelief, as if she couldn't quite process what I had just said. "What?" she stammered, shaking her head, as if hoping the words would disappear. "No, you're lying." I took a step closer, my eyes never leaving hers. "I'm not lying, Mia. While you were off with your little lover, I was with Carla." Her breath caught in her throat, and she stumbled backward, hands pressing against her chest, struggling to breathe as the reality of my words hit her. "You slept with my mother?" she whispered, her voice barely audible, as if the words themselves were too painful to say out loud. I nodded, a small, cold smile creeping across my face. "That's right. While you were sneaking around, I was getting exactly what you've denied me for months. And guess what? She was better than you. A hell of a lot better." Tears poured down her face, her body trembling with the weight of my betrayal. But I wasn't finished yet. "This is what betrayal feels like, Mia," I said, my voice dropping to a low, almost menacing growl. "This is what happens when you think you can play me for a fool. You think you can cheat on me and walk away scot-free? No, you don't get to mess with me like that." She was crying uncontrollably now, reduced to a broken shell of the woman I once knew. She fell to her knees, pleading with me, desperate. "Please, James," she begged, her voice hoarse. "Please don't leave me." I crouched down, bringing my face close to hers. "Oh, I'm leaving you, Mia," I said softly, my voice colder than ever. "I'm leaving you with nothing. No home, no marriage, and no mother who can ever look you in the eye without remembering what happened between us. This is what you've earned." I stood up, my heart icy and my mind as sharp as a blade. She had destroyed everything we once had, and now I had destroyed her. There was no coming back from this. Slowly, deliberately, I turned to leave. As I reached the door, I glanced back one last time. She was crumpled on the floor, sobbing, her life in ruins. I let the silence stretch, savoring the moment before delivering my final words. "Don't mess with me, Mia." And with that, I stepped out the door, leaving her behind in the wreckage she had created.